stop smoking weed. That's what they say. That's what may have come to conclusion on my own. But I tried that, and I relapsed over and over again. Now, an important thing to keep in mind is that there are certain triggers that are happening in your environment, your people around you, or whatever, that's making you relapse time and time again. And understanding that is the key to never relapsing and smoking weed again. So here are 4 steps to control your triggers to smoking weed. Let's tap in. Let's get educated. Let's get entertained. Brew. Bah. Hey y'all, what's good with you? Welcome back to another video. Wagwan, gang. My channel is all about providing you with a daily dose of edutainment. That means in every single video that you watch, you will both be entertained, but also leave with knowledgeable insights that you can apply to your own day-to-day life and make it better. So, there are 4 steps to controlling your triggers. 1, you have to recognize the pattern by which you go about smoking weed. 2, feel the feeling, like acknowledge it. Don't suppress it. Oftentimes, the more you suppress that emotion, the more you suppress that feeling, the stronger and more powerful it comes the next time around. Because like you probably experience multiple cravings throughout the day that you experience when you want to quit. But not suppressing it, rather than suppressing it, you have to acknowledge it. 3, discover the message. 4, reprogram or rename the feeling. And here's Seb going into even more detail about these 4 steps. Alright, so let's get into it.
If you've ever tried to quit weed before and failed, at what moment did you fail? And this came at me in a question from a guy called Kevin, and his basic question is, every time I sit down to play Xbox, I will have a very strong feeling to smoke. How can I overcome the feeling to smoke weed when I play Xbox? These are triggers. So what we cover in this is 2 different types of triggers that you get, 2 parts of your brain that control triggers, and at the end of the video I'll give you a 4-step strategy to overcome triggers. So let's talk about the 2 different types, pattern-based and there's emotion-based. So before I start, I want to clarify, it's always to do with emotion, always. But sometimes the trigger is based on a pattern, and sometimes the trigger is based on the emotion itself. Pattern-based triggers, a thing, event, person, or place, or time, or anything that reminds you subconsciously to go and smoke weed. And they come down to pattern searching and just reacting without controlling it. So what do I mean? Oh, let me tell you some of my triggers that I had. I was a drug dealer, as you all knew. So I'd go to a lot of clients' places, and it was just a trigger for me. As soon as I'd see that person's face, their face reminded me of weed. Another trigger I had, which some of you may have, a lot of you won't have, but some of you may have, was waking up. Seriously, waking up was a trigger for me. It was a morning routine. It was a pattern. Oh, I'm awake now. Where's the weed? That's a pretty bad one. But there's plenty of them. When you've just finished dinner and you're full, your gut's full, and you feel content, some people use that as a trigger to smoke weed. So they're pattern-based triggers. So what are the emotional triggers? These are a bit different. This is a state of mind or an emotional state that puts you in a frequency that reminds you subconsciously to go and smoke weed. So let's say someone gets pulled over in their car and the police pulls them over. A lot of people have a cigarette. They're trying to calm their nerves. They believe cigarettes help them relax, and that's what they're trying to do. So I want you to picture this. Imagine this couple, and let's say one day they disagree and they do not come to a resolution. And this is an emotionally involved argument. They're both heated, right? And then suddenly the woman can't take enough and she walks outside and has a cigarette. He sits down and chops up some weed. This happens all day long and people don't even notice. So they are your triggers, either something pattern-based and there's emotion-based, all stupid belief systems. So let's look at your brain. There's the prefrontal cortex. We've talked about that before as Albert. And there's Rex, which is your amygdala. So what's the prefrontal cortex? Tons of animals have this, tons of animals don't have this. So some of the obvious smartest animals are monkeys, right? Chimpanzees, where we came from. But other animals have this too, like elephants and dolphins. And the thing with animals that bother to evolve this section of their brain, one thing they have is self-awareness, which means they can have self-control. And what Albert does is watches Rex, and he starts to recognize what's working. He starts looking for patterns, and he starts to fix it. And when he gets good at watching on Rex, that's called emotional intelligence. But this amygdala has problems, and if it does get problems, it stops sending the messages to Albert because it's damaged. The amygdala appears to play a role in binge drinking, smoking weed, and when it's being repeatedly damaged by abuse and then recovery, withdrawals, all of that, that signal is dampened. It's not as strong. So Albert can't read it, Albert can't learn, and you can't develop emotional intelligence. So that's what's going on. What's the 4 steps to control triggers? First, recognize the pattern. So some event, thing or person or place or anything is triggering an emotion that makes you take action to numb that feeling before you even feel it consciously. That's what happens. If you're smoking weed day to day to day and there's no logical reason and you've been doing it for years and you've tried to quit and you've failed, this is the reason. Second step, feel the emotion and name the emotion. What is Albert calling the signal that Rex is sending? We have in our vocabularies, most of us, hundreds of words to describe mostly negative emotions that we feel. So give your emotion a name. What is it? Guilt? Is it fear? Boredom? Anxiety? Loneliness? Angst? Vexed? Furious? Angry? Scared? Frustrated? Call it an emotion. Third step, discover the hidden wisdom. You just have to sit down and be with it. Be with it. Don't numb it out. We're used to seeing how we feel. We know if we're stoned or not. But there's also a lot of things we're not aware of consciously that's still going on and we're very aware of subconsciously. To the point where you take action. You actually get up, you go get your weed, you chop it up and you smoke it just to get rid of that thing, whatever it is. So next time you notice yourself doing this, just sit down and be with the feeling. This isn't meditation, this is just being with it. Trying to stay present rather than escape the present. And then pretty quickly you're going to want to get up and go and get weed, right? Because you've had your trigger. So when that feeling comes, instead of acting on it, just observe it and be with it. And you don't have to do it for long, just commit to 5 minutes. This is going to give you self-control. As you process emotions, this is what develops your vision of the world. And we're all different. We have different chemicals in us, different goals, different results, different skills, different motivations. So no one can tell you. You've got to figure it out for yourself. And if you're not getting these messages, you're not getting the wisdom, you're not developing emotional intelligence, and you may not be growing as much as you should be. And the 4th step is to reprogram or rename the feeling that you get. So after you've sat with it for 5 minutes, you might notice that the craving disappears. Cravings don't last 5 minutes, they're much shorter than that. And by the time you get to that stage, you may as well commit to another 5 or go back to what you were doing. Because the more times you do that thing that used to give you the trigger, without actually giving in to the weed temptation, the more you are reprogramming that feeling to the point where you will call it something else. It might be something a lot less mild or nothing at all, which means the trigger's gone. And by the way, this works in reverse. The words you use are so important. Instead of saying you hate something, if you just say something annoys you, it might not trigger the same feelings. Words are very powerful. It all sounds woo, doesn't it? I promise you, it sounds woo. If I told me this stuff 10 years ago, I would have said, who invited this guy? But what I'm telling you is the truth, I promise you. So try this stuff, it works, I hope it helps, and I'll talk to you again soon. Did you have any triggers that made you go smoke weed? Any things, events, people, places, times of day? Anything that reminded you subconsciously to smoke weed? I'd love to hear what it was.
Again, it's important to understand that avoiding weed or marijuana, whatever you want to call it, is not enough. You have to continuously change the neural associations you've adapted to smoking marijuana. The people you're around, the people you're around, the environment, and you have to really like adopt a support system in a sense that can motivate you to be on this path of sobriety. Okay, sobriety. Again, I always recommend it. This program always has my cosign. If you want more in-depth material, more like guided steps, like material on a daily basis that you should be doing, the type of foods you should be eating, the type of meditation practices you should be implementing at certain times of the day, definitely check out the Truth of Addiction program, link in my description and pinned comment. Something that I've learned is that sometimes when you get free content and free information, you tend not to act on the information or apply it. I know that's what happened to myself when I was trying to get better at women and dating. It's like until I actually bought the book, I didn't feel like the urgency or the need to actually take action upon information. So the program is like $30. You want to cop that if you want to like take the next step further to actually put some skin in the game and invest in yourself, invest in like your future, your job that may require you to be sober, to work at it, whatever it is. Check out the Truth of Addiction program, linked in the description. I appreciate you. If this video or the series of videos I have is enough for you, then I'm glad that it's helpful. If not, check it out. I'm grateful and thankful that you continue to watch these videos that I put out. I don't take it for granted. You could be watching anything on the YouTube timeline, the YouTube page, Instagram, Twitter, Musically, all that stuff, TikTok. But you're here with me, so I genuinely hope these videos, and this video in particular, was helpful. See? God bless, much love, peace and joy. Namaste. And always remember, if it doesn't feed you, don't water it. Don't continue to water dead situations. And always remember as well, keep that same energy. Be real, be authentic, don't be fake. If people doubted you, overlooked you, slept on you, but now once they see you have success, now they want to support you, you tell them. Keep that same energy you had when I started. Straight up. All facts, no cap. Alright fam, deuces.